Welcome, everybody, to Dr. Kim's Keynote. This is episode 2, and today we're going to have a conversation with an amazing guest. This is Dr. Kaman Hung. We want to welcome him to our podcast. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, Kim? How you doing, everybody?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thanks for being here. We're super grateful. So before we get started, do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Kaman Hung, and my name is spelled with a K but pronounced like a G. In Chinese, a little funny tidbit, it actually means family knowledge. So when I was growing up, my parents always used to sort of use that as sort of like a harbinger of things to come. I am very big into personal and professional development. I was a teacher for about 13 years. In the latter part of my career, I was a teacher coach, teacher mentor, technology coach. And then most recently, I worked with a tech company on their learning acceleration team. And now I work for a university as a mentor.
That's super exciting. And I know you have so much to share about the topic of personal development. Can you kindly share your thoughts on that for us, please?
Yeah. So I think that personal and professional development, they both tie into the same thing. It's essentially making yourself better, because the jobs that we are looking for in the next 5 to 10 years, we don't necessarily have college degrees or programs for them. And especially even for young people too. I think that one of the ways that you can really get ahead of any sort of curve, especially when it comes to success, is putting yourself, your personal and professional development first and foremost. There was a study actually that was conducted by IBM, and this is actually in a book called The Adaptation Advantage by Shipley and McCown. And they talk about how IBM in 2013 found that on average, the staff at across all sectors needed 4 days to upskill themselves. By 2018, because things have gotten so fast, technology moves so fast, everything is so much more advanced, they needed about 33 days to advance themselves. And the argument is that a lot of employers now, and even a lot of schools, they just don't have enough time to really get deep into the sorts of learnings that our students and our workers need, even leaders that need that type of development. So one of the most important things, I think, is making sure that if you yourself have a professional development plan that's in place, you need to follow it, you need to stick to it. And I'm a huge advocate of making sure that we develop ourselves.
Yeah, sure. As am I. It's super incredibly important, and I have always been relentlessly committed to my personal growth and development. Something I just heard you mention is about time. We know that that's really important. Can you kindly share some thoughts of your experiences on how we can carve out that time for our own learning?
So I've also worked as a little bit with as far as productivity is concerned, and whatever you spend the first part of your day doing, that's usually what's going to get done. Everybody says that we have 24 hours in a day, and that's true. So we have 168 hours within the week, but not every single one of those hours is equal, right? Some of us, we hit our optimal time between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning. Some of us, we have optimal times between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock in the evening. It really depends on the person. I would personally like to think that in my own life, when I get up out of bed in the morning, I usually end up doing the most important things first. And that does not mean that I check my email first. I'm sorry. My work comes second to my own development. I will read books in the morning. I will take about 15 to about 20 minutes to read a chapter of a book, or read an article that I found inspiring, or read something that causes me to think a little bit differently. And that really sets my tone for the day. I'll have my breakfast. I'll do my morning workout if I need to. I'll wash up and prep for the day. But for the most part, whatever you do first is going to be that most important thing. So when you think about people who come back home after a hard day's work, the first thing they do is they usually will put on the TV, right? You still have energy during that time of the day. The first thing that a lot of workers will do, in fact, when they wake up in the morning, is immediately check email, or they'll go right to their phone and they'll start scrolling through social media. You will have children, for instance, the moment they come back home from schools, what's the first thing they do? They want to go out and they want to play, right? Um, if we can get our students, if we can get our adults, if we can get our professional workers out there to start thinking along those lines of, well, if I only have 2 hours in the day where I can get most of my most important stuff done, what 2 hours is it going to be? And what am I going to do during that time?
Yeah, very, very important for us to map out our day. Something that I started doing recently, I made a shift myself in my personal schedule, and that is instead of looking at my end game, right, my outcome that I want to achieve by a certain time, I made a commitment to myself to each day allocate so much time to doing something, right? So I said, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to take a gym class, and so it feels really attainable
Yeah.
to set it up that way. And I'm finding that I'm actually accomplishing more by focusing on how I'm going to use my time and just make those commitments to myself, as opposed to, what that result is going to manifest in a couple months down the line. So something about, working on our daily schedule is something that's really working well for me as well. Something that
Absolutely.
I heard you mention is the connection between personal development and our career. So can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
So there's a lot of, I think a lot of people who automatically think that what's important in my career or the skills that I need in my career, I can't get through personal development. And that's not true, right? So there's been job opportunities that have come up for me in the past where it's been something simple that I've learned either through reading or through watching a documentary series or through engaging with somebody on public transportation somewhere or being on vacation. Um, One of the jobs that I was able to secure was working as a curriculum and instruction consultant with the state of New Jersey, and it was a good job. It was hard to get. Those government jobs are always hard to get. But one of the things that really set me up for that was when I volunteered. So when I volunteered at a prison, I was helping inmates get their associate's degrees, and it just so turned out that there were connections to be had, and a lot of the different types of rules and regulations that fall under state facilities. We have what's called the SFEA, which is the State Facilities Education Act. It transfers over into various departments throughout the state. And I didn't realize that at the time, but when certain questions came up about, hey, how much do you know about this? It was useful, right? But just reading books, I think, is plenty. And you don't have to read just nonfiction books. I mean, there's scientific research that shows that nonfiction books help you with a lot of different types of critical thinking, while fiction books help you with creativity. Um, so it doesn't matter what you're reading, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, but always try to make that opportunity every day to develop yourself as a person.
For sure. Yeah. And so our work is really important to us. And I know a lot of us are really trying to strive for that, strike that personal work balance, and I think personal development is incredibly important for our work, but as well as our personal life. So can you share a little of your experiences about how professional development and personal development has impacted your personal life?
So in my personal life, it's actually a lot richer. In fact, I have better conversations with my partner. I have better conversations with my parents, my loved ones, my family, better conversations with my friends. It's almost getting to a point where we have like a learning circle or like a learning environment where um, when we learn something new, we'll send a text message to somebody else and be like, hey, did you hear about this? Or what do you think about this? But that personal development really does help out in that personal environment because it makes things a lot more interesting, right? We're not just talking about the same things over and over again. I mean, when I first met my partner years and years ago, we would only talk about work, and that was the only thing we talk about. The first thing you come back home is we talk about work. Okay, great. How was your day, honey? Great. Everything was fine. Guess what happened to me in work today? Now it's very different. Now, because we have this mentality where both of us, we will read articles or we will read books, or she will share a chapter from a book with me. She will do an online course, for instance, and say, hey, listen, I found this out through one of the Coursera online courses. Why don't you check this out? It might actually be useful for you, especially in your capacity as a program mentor, right? And I'll turn around and I'll say, hey, I found this thing that's for you, and this might be great for you as well. And we'll have a talk about it. And it's great. And then what will happen is we don't just sit at night and just watch movies anymore, right? We'll watch documentaries, or we'll talk about different sorts of ideas, different sorts of business ideas, or different ways that we can actually help other people out. And it's actually made it much more interesting and fruitful.
For sure, absolutely. There's so many exciting things that we can learn and share, and having a partner to share those items with is really, really super important and beneficial. Thank you for sharing that. So, something I heard you mention is your work as a program mentor. Can you kindly share, through your lens as a program mentor and coach, how you work with individuals to help them develop themselves?
Yeah. I have a very sort of no excuses mentality. When I work with my students at my college, I will tell them there's no excuses for not doing this. I usually will find that when you're dealing with adult learners, it's a little different than when you're dealing with kids, right? Adult learners need to be told exactly why things are the way they are. Show us the research, give it to us straight. And show me how I can turn around and make this useful in my life. Show me how I can turnkey the information. When I start talking to them about, for instance, the mindset studies by Carol Dweck, or Grit by Angela Duckworth, right? Or Willpower by like Roy Baumeister, for instance. All of these things factor into it. There's a lot of students that will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, Doc, I just can't do this. I don't know how I can continue on with my studies. I've got work, I've got family, I've got all these other obligations." And I tell them the exact same thing that I've told our listeners on here. We usually tend to place things that are important first in our lives, first throughout the day, and not every single hour is the same. You only get about 2 hours out of the day where you can get that true deep focus. And if you wanted to get more of that, it just takes time. But working with each student has been an individual process. I mean, I have students who are military students that are on base in Germany or Guam. I have students that have family members. I have students that are single moms. I have students that are entrepreneurs, that are all part of the same program, right? And for many of them, I even have teachers, in fact, that are trying to escape teaching to go into a different career path. And so I've had a lot of connections, a lot of talks with them, and it's been awe-inspiring to see some of them actually go back and complete their degree programs.
So it's very interesting that, and it's my experience too, that people are looking to do something different, whether a different career, or delve into entrepreneurship and start their own businesses, or they have this idea and they have this dream that they would like to pursue. I'm interested in knowing your experiences with working with your students and other clients on how personal development has influenced their confidence and self-esteem.
At first, it's challenging, right? When you start going into a new field, I think there's something to be said about people that are transferring from one field to another that's relatively similar, right? It's the equivalent of a college student who studies sociology and then decides to double major in psychology. There's a pretty easy transition into that. There's a pretty simple way that we can find connections. But if you are a teacher and you're going into computer science, for instance, or if you are a school administrator and now all of a sudden you decide to start your own business, as you have, it's incredibly challenging. It's nerve wracking, and I could just imagine that there's a ton of things that you need to learn. When my partner and I, when we first started our business years ago, we started a sports business. I mean, we had 3 businesses that failed before that sports business. We had a t-shirt company, which failed. We had a soap company, which failed. And we had a company that taught emergency life-saving skills that all failed. And part of the reason why they failed it wasn't because the product was bad or anything. It was just because I either I didn't know what I didn't know, right? But now going back, I mean, I went back to school a couple of years ago for my MBA. And prior to that, I was reading business books. I was reading books by Mark Cuban. I was reading books by Jim Collins, reading books by John C. Maxwell, for instance, leadership books, and a lot of the things that were even competitive books, like by Michael Porter, the famous Harvard professor who came out with Porter's Five Forces. I was reading all those different types of books, and then I started realizing, you know what, I really don't know everything I need to know. Maybe I should just go back to school and check this out. And the truth is, not everybody needs to go back to school, right? I mean, you can go online and you can find tons and tons and tons of resources. I mean, right now we are in the information age, okay? So we went through several different ages in the period of our history, and right now it's the information age. And then they're estimating that this age itself is going to be really short, because the next age that's coming out is going to be the machine learning age, or the artificial intelligence age, right? So that learning curve itself, it's no longer a linear curve that we need to learn. It's more of like an exponential curve. Like, how can we go ahead and skip forward, jump up a few steps? And it's okay if we fail to do that. I had 3 businesses that failed before the 4th one actually ended up taking off, and it did pretty well. But at the same time, I didn't realize how hard and how much effort running your own business costs. There's overhead that's involved. There's taxes that's involved. There's other people that you have to consider. There's other partners that might have been involved. And now I think that if I were to go back and do the exact same thing again, it would change. But in regards to students that are switching into alternative career paths, good luck. It's fun, right? You have to look at it as fun. And I think there's 2 mentalities here. You have the type of person that's going to go into this going like, you know, I'm just going to go out and explore. I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to venture out, and I'm going to be adventurous. And if something hits, something hits. And then you have the other person that we see, which is basically a raccoon that's on a cliff that's being attacked. And the only way out is through your enemy. And for many of these people, especially teachers, I've seen a lot of teachers that have just come back and have told me, I have to get out of teaching. I don't know what I'm doing. I swear to God, I'm going to quit. I can't take it anymore. I'm being disrespected. The kids are rowdy. You know, all these different sorts of issues compounded again. The politics that is going on in schools, the book banning, the school shootings. It's actually I think the hardest job in America. I think it's the hardest job in America. It shouldn't be that hard, right? But that's how desperate some people are. And if you really want it, you will find a way to make it happen. And I've had many people who have come to me and have said, you know, I'm really not an IT person. I'm really not a computer person. Why are you doing this then? Why are you doing this degree in information technology? Why are you doing this degree in computer science? Why are you doing this degree in software development? And they turn around and they say, well, I need something else to do. I need to find a different career path. And my thing is, my sort of advice for anybody who's going into that different career path, if you're choosing a career path that you originally struggled in, good for you, right? Congratulations. I'm backing you 100%. I would love to stack the deck on you. Okay, I want to get behind you and I want to root for you, support you, but you already have to think that you're already there. Case in point, a couple of years ago, they did a scientific study where they asked 2 groups of people, all right? They split them up into a control group and an experimental group on how they quit smoking. Mm-hmm. And the one group was told, when you are offered a cigarette, you're just going to say, oh, no, thank you. I'm trying to quit. The second group, which was the experimental group, was told, anytime somebody offers you a cigarette, you have to say, no, thank you. I don't smoke. Even though they were all smokers, they were all trying to quit. Now, Kim, which group do you think was more successful?
The second group, I'm going to guess.
Absolutely, right? Because it's part of that mentality. Mm-hmm. There's a great book by Scott H. Young called Ultra Learning. And this is a young man who, well, he's not really young anymore. I mean, he's like mid-30s now. But at the time he wrote the book came out in 2018, he had completed MIT's 4-year undergraduate program in computer science in 1 year. Passed all the exams, all the tests, everything, and self-taught himself. And one of his ways of doing this was to immerse himself into it. He already thought of himself as a computer engineer. Mm-hmm. Going into it, he told himself, he goes, you know, I've never been a computer person in my life. He studied business at the University of Ottawa. And he never did computer science because he wanted to run his own business.
Hmm.
Well, he turned around and learned computer science because to him that was a challenge.
Hmm.
And for him, it was diving deep. It was going deep into the field. So my advice to anybody going into it is to really think of yourself like you're already there. If you are not a teacher and you want to go be a teacher, tell yourself you're a teacher. All right, put things around your house. Get like a little tiny magnet on your fridge that says "World's Number One Teacher." Okay, and then start working through those things. If you're having students that are having issues passing the praxis, you have to tell yourself that you're a good test taker, right? If you are having people who are going out into business, tell themselves that they're an entrepreneur. If you have people that are going out trying to buy houses and flip houses, tell themselves that they're a real estate investor. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is you're highlighting some of the important core tenets of Think and Grow Rich, right? Super
Okay,
important. Yeah, for sure.
Napoleon Hill. Yeah.
Napoleon Hill for sure. So for me, what's coming to my mind as I'm hearing you share these experiences is what it comes down to is really what are you passionate about, right? What is important to you? What can you champion? And go out and do something that's in alignment with your passion, what you can champion, what you believe in, what your skill sets are. And you reference me. For me, I've been in public education for 30 years. I've had the privilege of serving from teacher to assistant superintendent of schools. And for years now, I just had a burning desire. I had a burning desire since I was a fifth grade teacher in Paterson, New Jersey, to write children's books. Or not so much, small children, but that elementary middle school level, because at the time I could not find a lot of texts because my kids were in novels that really my kids could connect and relate to, right? And it's been sitting on my heart for years. And about 4 years ago, I just decided to take on the mantra of my beloved Rocky Balboa and go for it. And because this just burning desire has sat with me for all these years. And what I wanted to do was just take my passion for teaching and learning in kids and take the expertise I've had in developing myself as an educator all these years to start Bono's Learning, to really just serve as a supplemental resource for teachers, for parents, anybody working with kids. And that's what, I'm working on, building out just as that support piece. But in terms of skill set, I can tell you that when I even thought about doing this, like, yeah, I know what kids need. I know how to write curriculum. I'm a curriculum developer. I love that, but I don't know how to publish a book. I have no idea how to do that. Right. When it came out to, putting together the concept of starting a company or a business to push these things out, like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about that. And so I was definitely in that position. I had the content, the background, the expertise, the credentials, all that good stuff. But I knew that I had some gaps in my skill sets to be able to pursue dreams that really sat on my heart. So I started to go look and find out where I can get them. And I started diving into entrepreneur resources, whether it be videos, websites, books. You referenced John Maxwell. I joined the John Maxwell team,
Yeah.
who is definitely, a guru, if not the go-to for leadership and personal development. And as I was going through the John Maxwell team, content, I was really confident in leadership in other areas. But once I came across that business building piece, I was like, this is exactly where I need support. I got a mentor. I joined mentorship. I have a coach just to help me learn more and build those skill sets. And then once I started doing, because I was in that scary place, right? I was at that scary place with the big monster in there that I didn't want to open the door. I was like, I don't know anything about that. But once I dove into finding resources that will help me fill my gaps, I realized actually also those gaps aren't as wide as I thought they were. And that scary place isn't as scary as I thought. And even as recently with just wanting to start this podcast, right? This little video podcast idea. I just decided, you know what? it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to get things right. Just go for it. Just start and do it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I would encourage anybody who has an idea or a dream, or sometimes the first things we think about are those limitations, right? Because I heard you talking about those challenges. And, we have a tendency to go there. We have a tendency to think about what's not there as opposed to what is there and where we can start from. Yeah, so that's just a little bit about, my experience with personal development, working as an educator all these years, but taking the expertise and wanting to live out my dream and my passion, and just finding things that would help me fill those gaps. And I work on something every day, whether it be a book, a podcast, or something. And the more I do that, the more my confidence built up. And I got this. I can do this too,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to engage in these conversations and, support people, and who are, have that dream or that passion that they want to just start and try to do something. So
You'll find that you're a lot more capable, and I think most people are a lot more capable than they believe they are. And I think part of it is the way how we grow up. When we grow up, our parents tend to tell us what we can't do. So no, you can't touch that. No, you can't go there. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. And so a lot of the times growing up, you start hearing these things. You're like, okay, well, what else can't I do? So as a teenager, you start to rebel and you're like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then finally you get into the workplace, and the workplace tells you, okay, these are all those things that you also can't do. These are also all the regulations that you have. But it's interesting to see that, though. I believe that there was a study that came out that showed that there were just 13 different sort of industry level traits or skill sets that transfer from one area into another. So for instance, if you are into organizational development, for instance, you could transfer into coaching, you could transfer into counseling, you could transfer into performance management, right? And then you have all those data people that are out there that, if you're good at data, you can transfer into computer sciences, you can transfer into programming languages, you can detect patterns, you can do AI, machine learning. And then you have your people who are your principals, for instance, or your superintendents of school districts, that even though you might have some knowledge, or you have no knowledge of writing a book, you have all this knowledge of writing a curriculum. I'd hate to say this, but curriculum is pretty challenging. Curriculum is when you write curriculum, there's a lot of rules that you got to pay attention to. There's certain regulations, state regulations, that you need to pay attention to. So for you, writing that book, although it's not necessarily the same, it might be an equal challenge, right? It might be just as I would say rewarding in that sense, because now you also get to reach a lot more people, and you're tapping into your writing skills, you're tapping into your creativity skills, you're tapping into your beginning, middle, and end skills. All those skills that you need in order for you to write curriculum are prevalent in writing a book.
yeah, for sure. And it's super exciting. And I appreciate that encouragement. So I'm interested in knowing some of the strategies that you have that can help people who are struggling with personal and professional development. So can you kindly share the strategies? I think you have top 20 strategies, if you
Yeah,
can share
so
with
so I
everyone.
do have my own top 20 strategies and everything. But
Yeah.
some of them can kind of overlap with some others. But my first one is you have to understand what personal development means to you and what it is that you want to achieve. You have to first start out with that goal and that objective. If you don't have an objective, you really don't know what you're doing. It reminds me of that story, Alice in Wonderland, where she walks up to the Cheshire Cat one day and she says, "Excuse me, do you know which way to go?" And Cheshire Cat says, "Where do you want to go?" And she goes, "Well, I don't know. Anywhere will do." And he goes, "Well, if you want to go anywhere, any road will take you there." So be as direct as possible. The second one is set realistic goals for yourself and then break them down into small, achievable steps. I think we all have this goal, and this is for some young people or even adults who are going back to college, right? One of the things is, oh, I want to get my degree as soon as possible. Great. Let's break it down into semester. Let's break it down into term. And then after that, we're going to break it down into class. And then once you break it down into class, you're going to break it down into the first half of your term and the second half of your term. Oh, and then after that, you're going to break it down into unit. And then when you break it down into unit, you're going to break it down into what is due this week. What are things that I can do this week to move me forward? Once you start breaking those things down, it becomes much more manageable. I take the example of, and this is very simple. Just think of the example of dropping sugar into a cup of coffee. If you take a cube of sugar and you drop it into a cup of coffee, it's going to take a lot longer than if you take a teaspoon of sugar and drop it into that cup of coffee, because now it's broken up into small pieces and it dilutes a lot quicker. You will get your goals done faster. Um, Number three, you have to have a positive mindset and surround yourself with positive people and things. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they say, oh, I'm hanging out with people who aren't necessarily positive influences. Jim Rohn, and you're familiar with Jim Rohn,
For
Kim,
sure.
a brilliant guy, all right? He used to say, you are the average of your 5 closest friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty darn true. In fact, John Wooden, who was the famous UCLA coach, men's basketball coach at the University of California, Los Angeles, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, winningest men's basketball coach of all time, used to say, you show me who your friends are, and I will show you your future.
Mm-hmm.
So just surround yourself with positive people and people who are going to be champions for you. Number four, you have to practice self-awareness and be honest with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses. I think a lot of the times when we're younger, we are told that you need to practice getting better at your weaknesses. As you become an adult, you need to get better at your strengths. Nowhere is this more prevalent. If our listeners want to take a look at this, take a look at Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. It's a brand new book, just came out this year, 2022. And he has some other great books too, like Now Go Put Your Strengths to Work. He's part of that Gallup organization. And he's done all this research that shows that we spend way too much time working on our weaknesses, when really, if you just work on your strengths and you put a little more effort into your strengths, you'll be able to turnkey that and really become successful, right? Number five, you have to be open to change and be willing to experiment with new things. Be as open-minded as you possibly can. How many times have you shut down opportunities because you said, oh no, I'm not that type of person?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, oh, I'm not a computer person. I'm sorry, it's 2022. Get with the program. I can't tell you how many students that have told me, oh, I'm not a math person. What do you mean you're not a math person? Math is like the language of the universe. Like, don't say that. Stop saying that. So be willing to change. If you're that type of person that walks into a Chinese food restaurant and you keep ordering the same thing over and over again, try something different. All right. Take risks. If you drive to work every day using the same road, try 1 day per week on Fridays, for instance, just trying a different path to work. All right. Number six, don't be afraid to ask for help from others. I know this sounds like it's so mind-blowingly stupid, but there's a ton of research that goes that talks about how men are less likely to ask for help, mm-hmm. and people of color are less likely to ask for help. All right. Men are less likely to ask for help because they perceive it as a threat to their masculinity. Women usually don't have an issue asking for help unless, of course, they are high up in an organization, and in which case that's perceived as being incompetent, which it's really not. But people of color notoriously do not ask for help, and part of the reason why is it's because of that stereotype threat. And if any of our listeners want to take a look at the research, there's research out there. You can take a look at the book Whistling Vivaldi by Claude M. Steele, who used to be a Columbia researcher. And then also take a look at University of Texas at Austin, Yuri Treisman. He has what's called the Treisman model, in which he has lower socioeconomic students working with other lower socioeconomic students and ask for help during advanced classes like mathematics or differential equations, for instance. And what he's done is he's been able to get those students passing those classes. Number seven, take responsibility for your own happiness and well-being. Your job, your supervisor is not responsible for your happiness. Your partner is not responsible for your happiness. You are responsible for your happiness. You are responsible for your well-being. Number eight, you have to make time for professional development activities every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Number nine, stay motivated by setting regular reminders and rewards for yourself. I can't tell you how many times you need to go ahead and pat yourself on the back after you do something good. But a lot of my students and a lot of my clients feel the same way. Oh, well, I just managed to do it, and it's not that impressive, and they beat themselves down. And so what happens is, like, they self-punish themselves and they stop being successful in that area, right? Mm-hmm. They become their own sort of like Achilles heel. All right. Number 10, be patient with yourself and just remember that progress will take time. I use the analogy of climbing up to Everest. If I were to tell you to go straight to Everest, that would be really tough. But if I told you to just take one step at a time and eventually just get to base camp 1, then base camp 2, it's much more manageable, right? Number
Mhm.
11, you have to get organized to make sure that your belongings, your ideas, maybe your map is in front of you, your plan of action is in front of you, and just follow the plan. Um, and then, number 12, no matter what happens every single day, you have to take those steps every day and do the hard work. If you can do the hard work first thing out of bed in the morning, the rest of the day is going to be easy. And it reminds me of Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, right? If you've ever read his book, Eat That Frog, it's a metaphor that he uses. And in it, he says, it's been said that if the first thing you do every single morning is you have to eat a frog, then everything else throughout the entire day is going to seem comparatively easy. Make it
Mhm.
easy, right? It's in coaching, we call that big rocks. There's big rocks, little rocks, pebbles, and sand, right? You do the
Yeah.
big rock first.
That's
Okay.
Covey's Big Rock. If you want to check that, I've used that video so many times. It is so worth checking out. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yep.
Hmm.
Number 13, visualize yourself achieving those goals. All right. You have to live that life. All right. Eat, sleep, breathe, dream, eat your goals every day. There should be something around your house that says that. If you want to be a mechanical engineer, buy yourself a mechanical engineer shirt. Get yourself a mug every morning that says "World's #1 Mechanical Engineer." Put posters on the wall of different companies that you want to work for that are hiring mechanical engineers. Put mechanical books on your shelves, and start really absorbing those areas. Hang out with mechanical engineers. Go to YouTube sites. Go to LinkedIn Learning, for instance, and learn about those different types of concepts and principles. Number 14 is you have to be persistent. It's a long game. It's a marathon. It's never a sprint. Anybody that thinks this is a sprint is crazy, but you have to be persistent day after day and never give up, right? And then number 15, just accept the setbacks, right? When you accept the setbacks, you're going to be in a completely different mindset. Taking responsibility for those setbacks is going to be key to understanding it. I think a lot of people just give up when they hit those setbacks, and that it doesn't do them justice. Number 16, take care of your mind and your body by practicing wellness exercises. Okay, practicing different types of mindfulness techniques, learning which times of the day your body has its prime urge, right? Number 17, you want to find any negative influences that are out there that are laying around, any sort of clutter that's filling up your life, any sort of things that you're still thinking about, any sort of regrets, and remove those completely. All right. You can never completely 100% remove every single regret. And honestly, you need to turn those regrets into positives, because a lot of the times you're in the place that you are right now because you did something that made you who you are, right? Never have regret. In fact, if it comes across, if you come between a fork in the road between something that you have to do versus something that you don't have to do, always take the road where you have to do it, right? The regret that you feel for doing it is far less than the regret you're going to feel for not doing it,
Mhm.
right? And the other thing is too, you have number 18 is you have to read self-help books. All right. Listen to motivational podcasts, watch inspirational videos, help to keep you on track. Those are probably non-negotiable. And I probably shouldn't just say self-help books too. There's a variety of books that are out there that are available for you. Okay. One of the big ones is, read a biography, for instance. If you read a biography, you can learn so many different things from people in the past that have been successful, right? But therein lies the odds are always going to be against you, just so that we understand. We tend to read books about Bill Gates, about Steve Jobs, about Anthony Robbins, about Robert H. Smith. We tend to read all these books because these are the people that are successful, and we want to know what it takes in order to be successful. But we never see all the other people that are unsuccessful. How many people started a tech company in the same year that Bill Gates did? How many people tried to start a computer company in the same year that Steve Jobs did? How many people tried to start an investment company the same year that Warren Buffett did? It's probably hundreds, right? Maybe even
Sure.
thousands, for instance, throughout the world. But we don't hear about them because we tend to glorify um, successes. And so when you read biographies from people, you also read about their failures as well. And so it's you have to be able to learn from failure.
Sure.
Um, Number 19, you want to find a professional development group or a coach to help you stay accountable and motivated. And then the last one is number 20, making sure that you are getting enough sleep every night. And those are my top 20 tips.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I think one that I've really been working on is just sleep myself. I downloaded a little sleep app and I started sleeping with my Apple Watch on and tracking my sleep. And you'd be surprised how much quality sleep we are not getting.
Yeah.
And I've read so much, including what Ariana Huffington has put out about the power of sleep and how important it is. So it's a great way to wrap up. Make sure we're just please make sure you're taking care of yourself, because our personal development is really through a holistic lens, right? Our mental, emotional, spiritual systems all work together. And so it's just really super important, to just be aware and mindful about what we can do to take care of our bodies, our mind, our spirit. And sleep is definitely a foundation
Yep.
to support all of our systems. So I want to thank you for the gift of your time and sharing your plethora of experience and knowledge in the area of personal development. There's something I'd like to do to share out there. So you mentioned John C. Maxwell. I mentioned John Maxwell as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a teaching of one of his books called The 15 Laws of Invaluable Laws of Growth.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about that book before. And so I'm going to push out a teaching on that. So I hope that you find that helpful. If you'd like more information about that, just please let me know, because I have a lot of resources. But thank you, Gaman, for the gift of your time. I'm so grateful. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen, and be on the lookout for that teaching on the 15 laws by Dr. John Maxwell, diving a little bit more into personal growth and development. We will see you soon. Next time, please look out for episode 3. And thank you again for your time. And remember to kick it with kindness. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much, Kim. Bye bye.
Thank you.